Welcome, everyone, to episode 111 of Star Wars and Scotch. Today, I am joined by our producer, Paul. Tim is heading to Memphis tomorrow for Build Against Cancer. So when you hear this, make sure you tune in this weekend. You can watch on the GCX channel on Twitch. You can also watch on Dr. Lupo's channel on YouTube. But make sure you're tuned in for Build Against Cancer. If you have some cash, we would love for you to help the kids at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital by donating to Build Against Cancer. But Paul is joining me today because Tim is very busy prepping for his journey to Memphis and also preparing for the charity stream. So, Paul, how are you this morning besides your snafu on the way here?
Oh, listen, when your ABS turns off, it's an interesting morning. But it's been good. It's been good. I'm excited for all the new things we're kind of seeing come out this week. I don't know. It's been a weird week for me for Star Wars, just because, in case anybody doesn't know how we kind of run the show, basically, I kind of gather up a bunch of news as the week goes through, and then Kevin shoots me a bunch of news that he sees, and occasionally Tim will throw some random tidbits in there. And so I think it was the first week where I think it's been light enough that you haven't sent me anything like huge, like right off the bat on like a Monday or a Tuesday.
Well, in classic Star Wars and Scotch fashion, the Fallen Order trailer came out the day after the episode, and the Bad Batch trailer dropped the day of the episode. So we have those two trailers. I'm going to cover them this week with Paul. We'll give our thoughts, and then we'll revisit them next week with Tim in our last episode before our holiday break. So just so you all have the schedule, we have this episode, we have next week's episode. Tim and I are going to take a 2-week break. But for the week after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's, you have a special Andor roundtable that was recorded a few weeks ago, the week after Andor ended, I believe, with our good friend Chase, the Gay Jedi, Alex from Star Wars Explained, and who was from Most Things Kenobi?
Lauren.
Was it Lauren?
Lauren for
okay.
Most Things.
Wanted to make sure.
Yep,
I did not
and
want
then
to
Tim hosts it. We're excited to get that out. It's taking a little bit to make sure it's edited properly, just like all long big boy projects are, but it's been good anyways.
So that'll be released as a regular episode the week between Christmas and New Year's when Tim and I are taking time off. And then Tim and I will be back. I was like, oh, we can take off the following week too, but we can't because that is the day that Bad Batch season 2 drops. So technically Tim and I only get 1 week off. So we'll be back next week to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and get Tim's thoughts on these trailers. And then the following week, Tim and I will be taking a break. You guys won't notice anything, so enjoy that. But I get a week off. I will be driving to South Carolina that day anyway, so I wouldn't be available.
I will be in Maryland, so it's
so no one's gonna be here.
Take your vacation too. If you're listening, please take your vacation.
If you can, take it. Relax, enjoy your life. It's too short to not enjoy. So real quick, kingscoastcoffee.com, the 12 days of King's Coast wrapped. You heard me raving about the Darkness and Lupo mashup blend that was limited edition. The Bali High dropped yesterday. Kingscoastcoffee.com. I think you have a few more days if you want to try and get some last minute gifts at kingscoastcoffee.com. We still have Christmas blend. I believe we have a very, very small amount of cocoa, like barely any, if there is any left. And then, so you can get some last minute gifts in. It's a great gift for anyone who drinks coffee, and we'll get a new customer out of it.
I'm telling you, the cocoa too, by the way, don't sleep on the cocoa. That is my perennial Christmas gift for my cousin because he loves it so much. Who knows? If you do, great. If you don't, y'all missed out because it is one of those beautiful stocking stuffer or like perfect theme gifts for somebody for the holidays.
Barrel Age is gone. Oh, there is a little bit of cocoa left. Oh my God, like
6,
like 2 digits left of cocoa. So
it's worth it. And then personal review anecdote on the Christmas blend. One of my friends is a very, very heavy coffee drinker. We recently had them over. They had 1 sip of the cocoa, the Christmas blend, and they have now stated that every time the Christmas blend is out, they will be buying 2 whole bags. So here we go. I have converted one more. Friends, convert your friends because we don't let people drink bad coffee in this house.
There you go. You heard it. Heard it here. I didn't say it. Paul said it.
I said it.
We're gonna jump Into the Star Wars now. We have some news to talk about. We're going to break down the trailers a little bit. I don't want to go too in depth without Tim because Tim's going to have feelings and thoughts too. But Paul and I will give our impressions on the two trailers that came out. But first, before we talk about the Survivor trailer, Cameron Monaghan talked about Survivor being a roller coaster. Emotional roller coaster specifically. This is from Star Wars Newsnet. And quote, "This is going to be an emotional roller coaster for people. I think that you'd have to be made of stone for it not to hit you in the heart." Interesting. And I have some theories here. So I'm going to float it by. You played the first game, right, Paul?
Oh, absolutely. Love the first game. First game, I think first game was my foray into games that were Souls-ish, like Souls-esque. So I think we did actually the whole playthrough on the Rage Up Twitch channel back in 1920. Remember when
Yeah, I
we
mean, that was
of the old office.
That was the game I was streaming when I switched from Mixer to Twitch. I was mid playthrough.
Anyway,
so
to continue with the commentary.
Yeah. So my thoughts are when he says emotional roller coaster, I have a feeling they're going to dig deeper into the Jedi that are out there and lost, and we're going to get probably some cameos of folks that we know, introduced to new characters. They already confirmed that. We know that the person in the tank is probably not Starkiller because they narrate the trailer. And it looks nothing like Starkiller, acts nothing like Starkiller. So it was a fun idea, and maybe Starkiller will show up in the game, but I highly doubt it at this point.
It's still being floated. It just isn't looking like it's that person.
Right.
So we'll see.
And that doesn't mean we're shutting the door on Starkiller.
Exactly.
I feel like that's a character they put in their pocket and will use eventually.
I think they'll do the Revan thing. They float it and float it and float it and float it and float it until they finally go, yes.
Just because we've heard rumors of like Mara Jade coming back.
Yeah.
She might be in Mandalorian and all this stuff. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So Cal says we have a really dire situation that we find Cal in at the beginning of the game, where he is searching for ways to rebel that are becoming increasingly difficult and perhaps even hopeless, which is much the theme of Disney's storytelling right now. When you look at Obi-Wan, when you look at Andor, when you look at Bad Batch, when you look at the end of Clone Wars a few years back, it all ties into this. So Disney's going heavy and showing you how bad the Empire was that led to the various rebellions and uprisings across the galaxy. I think it's part of it is to silence the Empire did nothing wrong crowd, which Tim used to be a part of. But I think that's kind of the idea. Is Disney's like, look, these villains are modeled after the Nazi regime. They're essentially space Nazis. So you probably shouldn't like them. What do you think?
I'm, as much as I want to get on that train of like it's just to silence people, I think it's almost that they're also trying to take a more adult tone to Star Wars now, as much as like I think we referenced this with a couple other shows back when we were talking about something else, but they're kind of trying to age up with their audience at some level, because as much as we can keep Clone Wars and all these other cute animated shows and so on for all the kids, as we kind of translate more and more into what, the kids who grew up with Star Wars are now in, good God, I'm going to say this and it's going to horrify me, their 30s, their 40s, and occasionally the 50s with my parents.
My uncle's in his 70s. He's an OG Star Wars fan.
Like if you don't translate that and move it away from just being kind of what a, quote unquote a kid show, you end up running into what I would say is a lack of desire to engage your kids, because it's not what you currently are able to relate to. So like it's difficult for an older generation like that to be like, oh, I'm just gonna go watch the original pieces, and then if the new stuff either doesn't like continue the story and take it further, or actually perfectly one-to-one relate with some of the nostalgia, you end up with a less engaged audience, which is what I think they're really trying to avoid. We kind of seen it with how Andor kind of played out / Rogue One, and like making sure that Obi-Wan hit specific kinds of story beats. And so it's not just saying, oh, the Empire's bad. It's going, no. Like the Empire was bad in a sense that's not just like this fictitious bad, if that makes sense. It's not like it's like the boogeyman in the corner. It's no. The Empire was actually a thing that like ruined the entire galaxy. And so that really translates into what we saw at the end of Bad Batch, especially with Crossfire's defection. Like that was really, really one of those more adult flips, because historically in Star Wars we would have just seen the whole crew kind of swap and be like, yay, like go clones, be the good guys, and that's not what happened. Very similar
They've
to
done
how
a
we
very
see
good
Andor.
job on that point. They've done a very good job of humanizing the clones to the point where, they are a brotherhood. They, Clone Wars really, we felt when they died, when Order
Yep.
66 happened. And then it seems, say, kind of connecting the Bad Batch trailer to this conversation. In the Bad Batch trailer, one of the clones is talking to Crosshair and says, not all the clones think that this order was a good idea. And he's like, well, they're traitors. So we're starting to see the reason. Well, we already see in season 1 of Bad Batch that the Empire wants to work the clones out and bring in what we learn, in episode 7 when we meet Finn and whatnot, and we find out how they were, stealing kids and making them stormtroopers essentially. So in Bad Batch, we see the way they're working out the clones, and I think they're going to expand on that in season 2. I think they're going to mess with cloning more too. And the planet they went to at the end of the season 1 was very focused on the cloning. But
I think we referenced that it's all in reference to future projects, though. It's never been in relation to like the bulk of the army. It's always been leading into Palpatine's, eventual, body swapping resurrection, or again back to like what we currently know with other things, Starkiller, and like the ability to do things like that. And on that note, just because it just came to me as a thought, like it would not surprise me if with Bad Batch, as well as where they're translating the next kind of couple pieces of media with Survivor, that they're trying to set up how the cloning wasn't just a process to make Palpatine's next vessel, it was to make perfect loyal like Sith in general as a concept, because I think that's the other thing that we've been missing in general in regards to that, like by that little pocket of time where we have no idea what was going on with either the Sith or Palpatine or anything like that. It was all obscured in the shadows. So I think they're also trying to lean into that. We saw some of that at the end of Fallen Order, where like you had an independent Sith going, no, he's wrong, but like we must maintain the ways and be like this weird blend of things. And so I think they're also trying to get back into that. And I don't remember, because I haven't read all the High Republic stuff that's coming out. Like I feel like they're, again, as they're leading into Acolyte, diving more into like what the Sith culture is and how it like has been mulling and feeding over time as it was thought dead. So
we haven't met any Sith in the current High Republic timelines that we're in. We have had forced flashbacks of ancient Sith. We have been to where the Drengir are released. The what's it called? Planet. It's not a planet. It's a space station that has growth and stuff. I don't know what you'd call it, Arboretum or something. But there was
the oh goodness, Arbor is the word. The Arboretum thingy, like the planet.
Yeah. So there's 4 Sith statues warding and keeping the Drengir progenitor in stasis, and then they let the progenitor loose into the dark. So there's Sith statues. The funny part is they bring the Sith statues to Coruscant, because if you know the lore behind Coruscant, the Jedi Temple is built on a font of the dark side energy. Wild stuff. Anyway, so yeah, they bring the statues back. They realize what they are, and they bring them back to try and reprison the progenitor, but they're loose across the galaxy at that point. And then if you read the comics, you find out how loose they are across the galaxy, which is pretty much across the entire outer rim.
To wrap up that just real quick too, I think as we look at it, I want to make sure we note that the mechanics look incredibly fleshed out as well. It's not just that the lore is moving in this direction, it's that like the game itself is, once again, thank you Respawn for pushing the boundaries of single player third person experiences.
It seems like there's a part 2. I don't know if it's co-op. I don't know if you get to control someone. I don't know if it's just you have a buddy shooting stuff with you, but there's the one scene where the guy that looks a lot like Poe Dameron, I know he's not, has like flipping over Cal's back and all this stuff. And he has a blaster. He doesn't have a lightsaber. So it's very interesting. I'm trying to figure that one out.
I am really, really interested to see if that actually is a co-op portion, or if they do the pick your character for a bit, if that makes sense. It's like you kind of like get to go back and forth between the two. I don't know if I like the way that fits narratively, just because I think like we've kind of settled into Cal being the main point and the main story beat, but it's just the same way they did it with Andor. If they're trying to translate to like building the Rebel Alliance as a whole and so on, I think it's fine.
Yep. Well, Cal also has a crew because actually,
Yes.
which leads into my next point. We do see Siri in the Jedi archives on Coruscant. It looks like to me, at least, in the Jedi Temple. It might not be, but those look like the archives.
Could it? Like, there's no way for it to be. The Coruscant's like taken over by the Empire, and it's all.
You could sneak in, but the problem is the Emperor turns the Jedi Temple into his palace.
Yeah, so I don't think they exist.
But then the question becomes, where are those archives from? Because those look exactly like the Jedi archives in the temple.
Do you think they built something back on Zepho?
Who knows? Or maybe somebody got the archives out, or they were transported somewhere. I don't know.
That's really interesting.
If you look to the left in the picture on the article, though, look in the background. It does not look like a temple. It looks like it's some sort of warehouse or something.
Yeah, that's why I said something specifically in regards to Zepho, because I think that's where they generally like revert to, at least historically. And so I don't know if it's actually, that looks a lot more like Tatooine or something.
Everything looks like Tatooine.
I know, but like it's like, you know, the dirt with like, it looks
brown,
like the inside
dirty,
of a
dusty.
hangar. It looks
Tatooine.
like the inside of a hangar, realistically. Less the warehouse, but yes.
The other awesome thing from the trailer that was taken out is battle droids. So Clone Wars era battle droids. We see B1s. We see some of the assassin droids towards the end of the trailer. I saw a lot of comments like, I thought the Clone Wars were over. Da, da, da. If you watch Rebels if you watch Rebels, there's still places where there are droids being reused, reassembled. If you even read Aftermath, which takes place after Return of the Jedi, there's a character in there called Mr. Bones. Mr. Bones is a reconfigured B1 battle droid turned into a killing machine for one of the characters in there. So droids are still a thing. They're just not in full force being used as armies. There is no trade federation or anything like that. But it seems like we'll be going somewhere, because maybe it's a droid factory. Maybe it's an old trade federation planet. Who knows what it could be? But yeah, there's battle droids, and that got me really excited.
I'd love it to be Geonosis.
It doesn't.
It
could be.
I'm just saying, I'd love it to be Geonosis. That's all I'm saying.
I'm looking in the background. It could be.
On the note of droids, real quick too, we do get sentries again back from Rebels, which is really nice, but also really frustrating because I wanted that to be a Dark Trooper. Very, very, very sad.
There's Dark Troopers in it.
Yes, that was not the Dark Trooper, and so I was hoping we get more of that in general. What I am waiting for on the note of battle droids and the Dark Troopers is, please, for the love of God, Respawn, give me a droideka. Give me a droideka to fight. I don't care what it is. I want it to be rolling around where like I have to do some crazy Force stuff to deal with the droideka. That's all.
Hear me out on the sentry droid. I feel like the boss will be one or two Dark Troopers in wherever that area is.
Are we talking Dark Troopers as in Giancarlo Esposito, like
yes.
end of Mandalorian Dark?
Well, actually, no, that's a good point, because on the timeline, I don't know if in the Disney timeline, I don't know if Dark Troopers are even thing it, because that's phase 3, which means they have to go through their first 2 incarnations, which weren't as deadly as phase 3.
Right, so phase 3 was the Mandalorian
exactly.
Thing. Yeah. So they would have probably have phase 2. At this point, it's 5 years after Order, correct? Fallen Order?
Mm-hmm.
So that would put it... Oh, Lord, I need an actual timeline in front of me. It's closer.
This is what we get yelled at about every week.
Right. Somebody on Twitter, correct us, please. Just tell us where it is in the timeline. It'll be easier.
Forest Wampas.
Forest Wampas.
So if we have snow Wampas and we have forest Wampas, does that mean we have like volcano Wampas and beach Wampas?
Kevin, this is not Pokemon. We don't.
I just feel like if we're expanding the Wampa lore here, we can go a little bit nuts and just put them all over the damn galaxy at this point. No,
a Wampa is as a Wampa does.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm here for Wampas everywhere. Wampas are just fun. Like I don't know. What else do you do with a Wampa other than throw things and pretend to be a tiny Chewbacca? I don't know.
A tiny Chewbacca. Well, we'll
Is
get
it
to
in
tiny
reverse?
Chewbacca. That's in the Bad Batch trailer. We'll get to that in a second.
Listen.
Also, I love that the Wampa, like in all the other clips, Cal's beating whoever he's facing. In the Wampa clip, the Wampa's beating the living hell out of him, and it is hysterical to me. It's the only clip where he's getting his ass kicked. And the thing's just like slamming him on the ground like over and over and again, like a rag doll.
Remind you of Hulk in Avengers.
Oh yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
And just low key, real quick. So, I'm really excited. The trailer doesn't give away too much. The trailer gives us like some really big overarching pieces, and I'm gonna pitch you into that last Easter egg point because it's probably
you can do that one. Go ahead.
Oh well. Listen, when you finally get a lovely section of the original, Rise of the Jedi and Starkiller Saga encyclopedia book with all the pictures and stuff, and there's a giant crossguard from the Sith, which was used by Kylo Ren, and it specifically mentions where it's from and how it's done, and where it came from, and then all of a sudden at the very end of the trailer, you see Cal Kestis wielding the crossguard saber, which is specifically from the time of the Mandalorian Wars. It's a really, really interesting setup because it tells us at the least, it's giving the lore fans a little bit of an equivalent of a crumb for their patience, saying, hey, by the way, like, we're paying attention and we're diving into some of like the actual older stuff, not just new canon and current pieces. It's, hey, let's go back to the older pieces of Legends that you guys love and make sure that they're incorporated not just into watchable media but also playable media. So yeah, that's my high level commentary. If you want to get
I think it's probably nothing more than a customization for your lightsaber, because you were able to customize your lightsaber in the last one. You could do, so I'm thinking there'll be more customization. I don't think it'll have much. I mean, it might be a little Easter egg in the story.
I don't think so, because at the very end of it, they showed off some of the combat with it, and it's not traditional combat. It's not the dual saber, and it's not. It is like heavy great sword swinging that thing around like a sledgehammer.
Well, they have lightsaber fighting styles in this game. They didn't have that in the last one. In this one, you'll be able to choose your style. So you will be able to do like sledgehammer style, quick and fast, similar to the way if you played SWTOR back in the day, you had different lightsaber forms depending on what type of Jedi or Sith you were.
I'm just saying
they got rid of it, but
I think it's related to his combat form though, because if what we're seeing is to be believed,
I see what you're saying,
right? Like, I don't think it's just a fun gimmick. I think it is he puts this thing on and now you're wielding a great sword, just like Kylo would in terms of your big brutal strikes, just like Grandpa Anakin. And then the other two are a little bit more daggery, dual blade, Starkiller-esque, and then you kind of have the traditional normal single bladed style.
Yeah, you might be right. So maybe your fighting style dictates your type of lightsaber, essentially, at the end of the day, and then you can customize that.
The only thing I'm interested in is it looked like the blade was much longer than we're used to in that final series of clips. I don't know if it was like getting extended or retracted.
Might be more like a claymore as opposed to a sword if you're using like a heavy fighting style, because it's two-handed.
Yeah, but at the same time, it looked like the blade was like extending and retracting on moves, which is not something we've traditionally seen during lightsaber combat. But like, I'd be stoked.
We'll find out. Or maybe the lightsaber's breaking, because if I have it right here, if you look, sorry, audio listeners, maybe it's breaking because he didn't fully repair it too well.
That's true. No, but at the very end of the series, when you get the dual bladed, it's fully fixed because it's
you fix it, but it was broken at one point. Maybe inside there's a wire loose. Who knows? One more thing on that before we move on was the bounty hunter that's talking in the trailer. Alex, Star Wars Explained, put out a great theory video saying that he could be a Gendai. If you watch the old Tartakovsky Clone Wars, I'm talking the ones before Disney and Cartoon Network, the old Tartakovsky ones, which I love, by the way. Dirge is the bounty hunter that works for the Empire. In that, Dirge is a Gendai. Gendai are like next to impossible to kill. If you remember, and this is a bit more on the animation side, I think it was Obi-Wan I think Mace faces him first. Cuts off his arm or his leg or something. You think he won, and then all these tentacles come out and it just like grows back. Um, yeah, it doesn't grow back. It actually pulls the leg back in and like reseals the wound. So Gendai are like next to impossible to kill unless you get them in the brain. I don't think this is Dirge himself, but there's a possibility that that character could be a Gendai, which means that boss fight would be a lot of fun trying to get him through the heart or the brain to kill him instead of cutting off limbs. So that was really it on Survivor.
You're telling me that it's a vampire,
Essentially,
or a zombie. They're vampire zombies. Okay.
The person in the tank seems to be some sort of Jedi that's, completely not happy, for lack of a better way of saying that.
Would you be happy being sealed up like that and almost dead?
No, and now seems like wants revenge, but I don't know if they work for the Empire as much as they're just an antagonist, trying to get things done. So, also we can mount. Apparently, we have mounted combat in this.
I saw that. I was so excited to like jump on the back of a tauntaun and just ride into battle.
Yeah, so we'll see. Maybe there's different mounts. Maybe it's planetary. Maybe it's situational. We'll find out more as we go along.
Moving forward, we finally got some more news from Rogue Squadron in terms of what kind of happened. Also,
Patty
simultaneously,
Jenkins' career is a mess right now.
Did you see her state? So she had a statement on Twitter yesterday, which is very interesting. So I'll get into that after I read the news here. But a new report from Jeff Schneider indicated that basically Rogue Squadron had similar issues to like pre-production in relations to getting it off the ground, which is why it got halted. It had less to do with the actual script itself, apparently, and more just that it was taking forever to get things approved and moving forward. And so they kind of stalled the project. Straight from him, here's the thing, ... I've heard some things about Patty Jenkins. I've heard she's a nightmare, and I'm sorry. I hate to be the guy who's calling people names. I get it, but listen, I've said that about male or female directors too. I've heard everything that she turned in with Wonder Woman was a mess, and I heard that Star Wars Rogue Squadron was a mess. Like, what do you want from me? I don't know what you want to say. That's just what I've heard. The film was actually formally pulled from the release schedule in early September, with no word, which leads me to believe in general that there just wasn't enough movement. And also Bob Iger didn't have a chance to do Bob Iger things yet because Chapek was still trying to cut the fat in various ways. And since we know that Chapek had his hand in a lot of the cinematic stuff and what was actually going to be built and released, and it had to be according to his like desires and specifications, as much as I also think it's probably Patty Jenkins being a little bit of a stickler for her vision, it would not surprise me if it was two visions there clashing, and thus it never actually went anywhere, and that's why it really got stalled. Especially with the statement she put out this week in regards to what happened with Wonder Woman and why she stepped away from Wonder Woman 3.
Yeah, I read that last night.
It was very, very interesting. I don't want to get too much into it because it's a little bit separate from Star Wars, and not even really related to Rogue Squadron because she doesn't mention it at all. It's all in relation to what actually happened inside Warner Brothers, especially with the changes that were occurring after the Discovery merger, and then the CEO's exiting and James Gunn coming into the fold to kind of be a co-CEO. So based on that commentary alone and the people backing her up there, I would not be surprised if, as much as we're hearing it from Jeff that it was Patty Jenkins's issue, we kind of know everything at Disney and Star Wars kind of ran back to our exiled Bob here. So I don't know where realistically to place it inside of truth or fiction at the moment.
Yeah, it seems like on both. Well, here's my thing: is it seems like he said, she said in each situation, but I feel like if DC had an issue with her too, and now Star Wars Lucas had an issue with her too, it might just be that she's not putting out good enough content for them to be interested, or maybe the first draft of the story was just like, nah. We know James Gunn is going to be a stickler about stories for DC.
It's think just interesting that he hasn't said anything. Like, he hasn't said anything, and she said that she hasn't heard from DC at all. So that doesn't sound like a James Gunn thing to me, and that's my point. Is like, if James Gunn had come out and said, hey, like, we're just not moving forward with Wonder Woman 3 due to X, Y, and Z, or just like we're taking it in a different direction, that's different than like not saying anything, not talking about it, and saying, hey, we're putting it in a different direction, or not doing anything. Because the whole point of her release yesterday was that nobody had actually said anything. Like that there was no like negative commentary or like we're not actually doing anything. It was just there was radio silence. So that's my concern.
Yeah, again, he said, she said, so we don't really know the bottom of it. Well, we know that that DC's not moving forward. We know that. We just don't know why, and she's saying she didn't hear why. So I don't know. It could be a number of things. You know, she did Wonder Woman 2, right? The not great one.
1 and 2.
She did 1 as well.
Yeah.
How do you go from that to that? I didn't realize she did 1.
I'm pretty sure it was 1 and 2. Let me double check, but I'm 90%.
1 is
sure.
such a good movie.
Yeah,
exactly. 2 is like 2 felt like good characters in a bad movie, kind of like Joaquin Phoenix and Joker for me. Like
no, that's yes.
Yeah, that's how that felt in 2. Like I was very interested in the characters, but the storytelling was just really off.
Yeah, no, number 1 was Patty Jenkins and Alan Henberg.
Wow,
number 2 was also like, Patty Jenkins. Yeah,
1 is probably one of the best DC movies ever. Period. End of sentence.
Yeah,
and that's saying a lot coming from me because there's a lot of Batman movies in there. So yeah, I don't know. It's
very weird. I think realistically, I think this is kind of what happens at the end of the day, which is you have too many people in the pot trying to direct a certain vision, because in reality, the original Wonder Woman, like Wonder Woman 1, was realistically in isolation. Like you could have put that movie out independently with no attachment to the rest of the DC universe, and it would have been a great movie with a great story with a great character, and that been it. But everything past that has been like trying to build into this weird DC, like cinematic universe, just like Marvel
disjointed universe,
and it never worked. And I feel like part of it is like her trying to have to shoehorn all of that into a movie where she just wanted to write her Wonder Woman movie, and thus she had to be like, oh, we have to have these characters and these plot lines and story beats to make sure it lines up with this. And especially after the fiasco that was the original Justice League, like that's why I can't I just have this issue placing all this blame on Patty Jenkins when number 1 was so good, and then the moment number 1 was good and they like took it into the DCE.
Yeah, DC does have a habit of, because they ruined Suicide Squad. Even David Ayer said that's not the movie he intended to make, and then they ruined Justice League. Zack Snyder said the same thing.
Yeah.
I just don't think I've ever heard anything about Patty saying that 2 was ruined, but maybe she wanted to keep her mouth shut so she could direct 3.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah,
I think she loves the character enough. Like if you read that statement, she's just glowing both about the character and the actors and actresses. So it's one of those like, do you just keep your mouth shut so you can keep working with your favorite people? Because I mean, we all know we do that. So and that's the same thing that happened with Zack Snyder and everybody else. Is like they just kept their mouth shut because they wanted to work together and finish what they'd started, not because they liked Joss Whedon. We know that for a fact. And so it wouldn't surprise me if something similar happened here. So I'm really hoping we get to see it. I'm really hoping we get to see some form of Rogue Squadron. It is such a good idea, such a good premise, that I don't want it to realistically be left on the wayside for, years upon end. I'm hoping Iger does some of his magic and kind of rallies the troops to give us what we've been
I haven't read any of the Rogue Squadron books I probably don't even remember the stories. That's how long ago it was. And then my only other recollection of Rogue Squadron outside of the movies is the N64 game.
That was really good though.
Oh, it was an amazing game. It was one of my favorite Nintendo 64 games. I'm really hoping, Nintendo, if you're listening, if you could just put that on Switch, thank you. Yes. Thank you. Star Wars Newsnet, Giancarlo Esposito was saying season 3 of Mandalorian is more expansive than ever before. Quote, I just think that the show gets more expanded and more visually profound with each season. And I think it's the vision of Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni that begins that expansion. But it's also all of the artisans that they trust to collaborate with them. I was blown away by the sizzle reel. All of a sudden, the world just came at you in a much more intense, and it's always been gratifying, but in a way that allowed you to know that feeling that you have. This is very poorly transcribed. You have a dread or doom of excitement personified. That's the feeling you get because the story is all of a sudden being coalesced for you to understand all of the elements that you didn't know about, which is what has made Mandalorian so successful. So I love that the mythology goes beyond the show. Behind this show is incorporated into all the visuals that seem to be filmic, and I love that fact. The fact that you're able to see with each episode this season, you're really turning on a new movie. Visually, it's a sight and sound extravaganza that expands you to a place that, we can say a lot of words about a lot of different things, just like Kaleidoscope. But I think when you watch it, you have the space to feel the emotion and connection between characters. The Mandalorian, you have the space to feel the largeness of this universe, of this world building, and you have the space to see where you fit in. God, I wish I could be that warrior, that hero, that heroine. And we see that weakness and the power of the villainous that want for themselves and not for the whole. What I love about the show is our army is all about us, who are starting to understand once again, it's for the people and by the people. And if we stand up and allow our voices to be heard and understand our strength in numbers, we can then recreate the world as it should be in peace and blah, 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 blah. He talks about feel good stuff. Back to Star Wars. So that's an interesting quote when he says expansive, and he's right. That's what made, which planet is Din going to next was always the fun part of the show. And where are we off to? Is it somewhere new? Is it somewhere familiar? Who are these characters we're running into? Is it someone new? Is it someone we know? The armor smith, new character.
Oh, that was so good.
Established Mandalorian lore that we already kind of connected with. Bringing in a Vizsla, who's an ancestor of a characters we know from EU and from Clone Wars and whatnot. Bringing Bo in, obviously, was a big deal. That having the person that voiced them in animation play them too was just like mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So he's right. He's hitting it. And if he's saying season 3 is going to do more of that in a larger way, the big thing for me in season 3 is Mandalore itself. We've seen Mandalorian Clone Wars. We've seen Mandalorians all littered throughout Legends and EU. We haven't really seen Mandalore itself except in some comics and whatnot. So to go to Mandalore in live action for the first time, even though it's destroyed, it doesn't matter to me. It seems like there's going to be some sort of redemption, rebuilding, and I think this is a play to rebuild Mandalorian culture for future Star Wars storytelling beyond where we are at in the timeline there, which means then when we go back in history, it'll be as familiar, when we start doing Old Republic stuff as well. And I'm sure there's Mandalorians in the New Republic or the High Republic. We just haven't seen them yet.
So to continue on that train of thought, I'm really interested to see what happens now that baby Grogu's gone. Like realistically, because this whole next
section, he's back.
Yes, but like they are trying to kind of do this thing where like you start splitting the storylines a little bit while they're still connected as like people. Because
I think he's just background noise this season. He's like
exactly.
I don't think he has a plot line anymore now that we've established he's going to stay with Din.
Yeah, it's just one of those moments where I want to see what happens when you remove, again, similar to what we've done with like Rogue One and Andor, is like remove the lightsabers, please, for a minute. Let's remove the space magic. Let's see what happens. Now, granted, at the same time, I don't want that to happen because the whole concept of Mandalorian people is also like entirely the antithesis of the Jedi and figuring out like what to do with that.
The yin and the yang.
Exactly. And so I'm really interested to see what happens. It still makes me laugh every so often that one of those memes comes up where it's the picture of the shotgun meme, and it's like shame, you guys got a great like molten saber right there. I wonder what would happen if I shot some molten lead towards it. Because they're the only people in the galaxy to still use like projectile based weapons simply because the Jedi existed. And so I want to see what happens as they remove that at some sense from their identity, because they are almost having to at the moment, because it's like they've never had to be like in a non-Jedi force existent world. It's always been like no, how do we beat these Samuel L. Jackson word here, right? And so I'm interested to see how they translate that, because we haven't ever seen it, with the exception of like Andor and Rogue One, where there's no real force and Jedi at play. And all of a sudden, we have Grogu, who's like, yes, I am still baby. I am fledgling. And so I can't do anything. I just get to sit here. Wave and cute, looking pretty. And Din and the rest of the crew are running around going, ah, yes, I have to rebuild Mandalorian culture. Oh wait, nobody likes me. And so
Yeah, it's just I feel like it's just something they have to do at this point. Like there's
yeah,
no we have to go to Mandalore, we have to explore this, we have to understand it, we have to make it all make sense and connect with older lore. I think that's the whole point of all of this is this is an effort to bring again, this is what Mandalorian does very well. It brings the familiar to people like you and me who know expanded universe lore, legends, and so on and so forth. But it also brings new people like my wife who doesn't have any knowledge of that, and my son. You know, my son will eventually be like me and dive deeper into
yeah,
the lore. That's just how he's built and how he's wired. You know, my daughter loves Star Wars, but she's not doing it with this. She does that with Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. Those are the two that she goes nuts on. My son is getting very interested in Star Wars now.
yeah.
And comics. So it's just the way. But my wife, she's never going to do that. But there's enough meat on the bone for her to be hooked to come back and watch season 3. And that is where they're excelling with Mandalorian. I know people love Andor more than Mandalorian. I love Andor. I don't even like comparing them. I don't think it's fair. But I love Andor. Right. I love Andor because of the tone. It's different. It's not that you're cut run-of-the-mill Star Wars, but it still takes place in one of my favorite places, you know, one of my favorite playgrounds. So that's the fun part for me with Andor. And I do think everyone should watch it. I do think if I sat down my wife and said, hey, watch this, it's fun, she would enjoy the journey and the ride. I think she connects to Mandalorian more because of a character like Grogu, because Luke Skywalker shows up, because she knows who Ahsoka is. So, yeah, that I think that's what makes Mandalorian so successful. They can manage to put all of this in a pot, mix it up, and the stew comes out amazing. So I think that's why Mandalorian will always traditionally do better. It was also the first live action TV show. So it was, you know, it's kind of like the streamer mentality where all the guys, yeah, all the streamers that were on Justin TV back in the day that stuck it out, like most of them are, you know, sitting at 2000 CCV now. So it's the same concept and same idea.
Yep, I agree. I think he loves to tease these things. Like every like 4 or 5 weeks we'll get like a really, really good headline from Giancarlo about like what's going on in Mando. Like it doesn't matter what it is, it's always something. And so as we've been getting closer, it's been less and less like vague hype and like, oh man, like it's you guys are going to be so excited, like, you know, and as we've gotten closer, it's been more and more like, no, like the story is expansive. No, like you're really gonna be excited to see the way they take, you know, the next conflict of Moff Gideon and the rebels, quote unquote, whether you want that to be the rebel, like, you know, rebels themselves or the Mandalorians. And so we're coming to this headway where like, okay, are you going to spoil anything serious? Or are we just gonna get to the series? Are we gonna pull a Dwayne the Rock Johnson where he spoils Superman before Superman is officially announced? Or, you know, and so I don't think he will. He's too professional for that. But at the same time, it's really interesting to see how far that line is getting. Of like, ah, yes, we're gonna keep.
I think they like him leaking details because he's very well spoken.
Yes.
He knows how to get his point across very well, and I think he manages to do that without giving us the, like, you know, it's like the
he has a hard line. Yeah,
it's the spoon at Costco. It's like here you go, you can taste this little thing, and you're like, oh man, I should buy that 65 pack of whatever the hell that is, even though it'll probably go bad before I can finish it.
yep.
That's kind of what he does, and you're interested now because he spoke and it was delicious, and now you want more. Yeah. So maybe you will pick that up. So and
he's, like you said, he's the person to do it. Like if anybody else would do it, we're probably gonna be like should I listen to your spoilers at the moment? But because he has such a genuine level of excitement for it, on top of him being so well spoken and so currently in media, that it's hard to not. As
he seems like Filoni. He seems like one of those guys that only takes roles he wants at this point.
Yes.
And then throws himself into it.
Yes.
And the boy
you see him in Far Cry?
I didn't beat Far Cry, but I played like 15 hours of it, and he was phenomenal.
Yeah. Yep. And yes, to your point, the boys, dude, And I think the other thing too is people are underestimating, because it happens in culture now where people will be like, oh, you're an actor or you're an actress or you're a musician, completely neglecting the fact that those people are people too. And like, he is a huge nerd, like
Oh, yeah.
huge, like it's not Henry Cavill, right? Because we stand our king of the nerds here, but he has this classic. I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. It's almost like he's like a regal figure, like he's like the monarch, as opposed to, like the young hip kid, where he's this a little bit more statesmanly nerd. Like he kind of like sits up here and is like nice dressed and like brushes off his suit for a minute and then tells you these like hyper nerdy things from 60 years ago and then keep going. And so it's this charm that like I think Disney's really just leaning into it in general, because they said, have fun, don't spoil anything. And Dave Filoni was like, the thing better than anybody. You are the character. Have a great time. It's very different from like a Tom Holland, where it's like, Tom, we're not letting you see anything. You don't get to see the entire script ever. Like, just sit over there.
Yeah, Tom is the type of person that I don't know if
you won't get access to certain IPs. It'd be very cute.
Sorry, our staff is asking for 2FA on something.
Go do your thing. I'll keep talking. Anyway, but basically, TLDR chat. I said chat. Is it chat? Do we call them chat here? I don't think we call them chat.
I mean, instinctively, we call them chat because of our history, but they're technically not chat because there is no chat function. So it's listeners, nerds
of all kinds,
nerf herders.
Nerf herders.
Yeah, you remember that?
We need to find a Wampa one.
Hope. You scruffy-looking nerf herder.
Yeah, but we need to find a Wampa one now with all the Wampas coming back. Because if we're gonna have volcanic Wampas and we're gonna have forest Wampas, like chat has to be some kind of a Wampa.
I want biome Wampa. I want a whole pop figure set of biome-based Wampas. That is my. If you're out there,
would a forest Wampa look like Swamp Thing?
No, the forest Wampas. Well, that is a forest Wampa. So you would want a swamp Wampa.
I would want a Dagobah Wampa.
A Swampa. The dad force is strong with me.
Yes. On that note, we're gonna jump to probably we referenced in the beginning, right? Like we got some. We'll start with the young Wookiee. The young Wookiee. We finally.
Do you know that Wookiee?
I do know that Wookiee. So if you guys haven't seen the new Bad Batch season 2 trailer, it came out this week. It's set to arrive on Disney Plus shortly after New Year begins, starting 2 episodes. 2 episodes. They've been doing this. I'm really enjoying the first 2, just because it gives you a cohesive chunk. But both of those will arrive on Disney Plus on January 4th. The big things that I'll kind of give you guys right off the bat. Number 1 is it is taking place after the Saul Guerrero deal. If you haven't seen the end of Bad Batch season 1, go watch Bad Batch season 1, because there's a huge big thing that happens. We referenced it earlier with Crosshair. If you missed that part, I'm not going to spoil it again for you just in case. But the big points are that the clones have finally broken free. They are no longer under the chip control that we saw at the end of, I think it was Rebels is the ones where they figured out the chip and took it out, right? Correct? Or was that a Bad Batch as well?
That was Rebels, if I'm remembering correctly. It all becomes one animated series in my head, so.
It does. So at the end, they figured that out. The Bad Batch figures that out as well and takes them out, but they kind of end up going in different directions. And so season 2 kind of really kicks off where that split happens.
Yeah, but we get Gungi. Everybody loves Gungi. He's everyone's favorite little Wookiee Padawan Jedi. Like you said, he's one of the ones.
It's Ahsoka's Padawan, not quite Padawan, but Padawan.
He's in the Ilum episodes where they're harvesting the crystals for their lightsabers of Clone Wars with Yoda and Ahsoka.
It's my favorite lightsaber building scene.
It's fun.
It's so cute. He does the thing, and then the way the face that he makes as he finishes his cute little lightsaber is like. Mwah.
That's what you learn about the droid that helps them build it too. That there's this one ancient droid that helps them, the Padawans, build their lightsabers. So, Gungi being there was made me very happy. But there's a lot of little things they dropped in that trailer. We get a new employer, Fee Ganoa, who's played by Wanda Sykes, who you could, if you couldn't tell that was Wanda Sykes' voice immediately, you obviously have not watched her comedy, and I suggest you you go
Please
do
go.
that.
Yes.
What's Rhea Perlman's character's name? Because she's Sid. Sid is also back. She's in the trailer, and Rhea Perlman is obviously playing her again because no one could mistake Rhea Perlman's voice. Omega looks like she has armor. Like she's part of the crew now. She's going around. They've accepted her into their little tribe because at first they were very resistant. Now it seems they're cool with it. Like we talked about before, the mention of Crosshair with the clone, when the clone says, you know, not everyone's cool with this. And he's like, well, they're traitors, too bad. So I don't know if there's a redemption arc for Crosshair in all of this. It could just be that this is it, and he is the bad guy. It would be very Star Wars to have a redemption arc, but it would also be fitting for their nemesis to be their brother.
So it's gonna be very interesting to see, because I don't think they've ever realistically made it as clear cut when there's something like this. Like it's always been a gray area when they have somebody defect like this, where they were on the quote unquote good side. It feels very much realistically akin to like the Rogue One of the world, when Galen swaps for a bit, and then all of a sudden goes, oh, right. And so even with Galen, there wasn't really a redemption arc. He just did something that could redeem the work he did. There was no redemption for him. And so that's kind of what I'm feeling here, is we may not get a specific redemption for the character, but the character may do something that redeems, you know, the idea of the character, if that makes sense. Because they're really good at doing that. Star Wars has never shied away from I don't want to say sacrificial acts in general, but the you know, the idea stands. So I'm excited to see what happens with that. The other cool things that we got from this trailer, we see Bail Organa, and so I'm really like, are we getting this Andor tie-in like we talked about 6 months ago?
Well, he's in Obi-Wan. Well, we know Bail is helping the rebellion very quietly. We know that from Rebels. We know that from the movies. So it is not a surprise to see Bail in Bad Batch, especially because we just saw him in Obi-Wan. I would not be surprised if we see him in Survivor. Would not shock me whatsoever.
Is he dead?
No.
In Survivor?
Okay. He doesn't die till Alderaan blows up.
Okay, gotcha.
That's when he dies, because Leia talks about her family and all that stuff. In New Hope. So he doesn't die till that happens. Gotcha. So yeah, it doesn't shock me to see him. They're making him and Mon Mothma more prevalent in. And again, Disney's diving heavy into how the rebellion formed, operated, so on and so forth. So him and Mon Mothma are getting kind of center stage through all of this and being leaders and subverting the Empire from within. I don't know if you saw the last Andor episodes, but Mon Mothma was playing 4D chess.
Yes.
With ISB, who's spying on her. So doesn't shock me at all.
Spending too much on the Rebel Alliance and then blaming her husband.
I was genius. Genius. I'm gonna start.
Great time.
I'm gonna start blaming my wife for all my bad World Cup gambling habits. No, I actually did. My friends are the Pete and Wayne from King's Coast are the ones gambling on the World Cup pretty extensively.
Are they up? Are they down?
Pete is up, but it got to the point where he lost money on, I forget which. Oh, it was Netherlands and Argentina. He lost the bet, but then he bet on the penalty shootout right when it dropped, and he won that. So he got his money back and then some.
There you go. Listen, I'm really excited in general for the season 2 of Bad Batch, because we're getting so much of these little things that I think we've asked for a long time, which is a little bit more depth, a little bit more classic characters, and the return
Cody.
I was gonna, I was gonna say in a minute, but that works. We'll jump straight into it. Rex finds Cody and brings him into the fold, and I don't know how to feel about it.
I mean, Cody did something terrible, but we'll see. Maybe that changes. I'm not going to sit here and I like Cody being back personally. That's what I'll say.
Oh, I like Cody being back. I just don't know how to feel about it because we've already seen that the clones are like, okay, like we're kind of like giving passes to everybody who had, everybody who did things because we know it wasn't, quote unquote, it wasn't them, right? And so we bring Cody back. And the question, of course, is like, much to Crosshair's point, like, are you a traitor or are you not? You know, like, and so we don't have any real information there. We don't know what's going to happen. I would love to see if he's actually back, a reunion with Obi-Wan at some point. Just because that character interaction would be really good. But I don't think we'll see Obi-Wan in Bad Batch. I think he's off doing his thing on Tatooine, and we'll
I don't think
catch
we'll
up with him eventually. I think introducing. I'm worried about the problem that Marvel is currently facing, which is you get to the point where you have to start phasing people out in general across the board. So when you bring back Cody, and you know that you are basically pining to have a season 2 of Obi-Wan. Like things like that are the things that give me a little bit of pause because I'm saying, okay, cool. How long can you keep that up though? Like Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen are not getting any younger. And as much as we're progressing technology, we can only take, oh God, what's his name? Clones Tiana Morrison, right?
Tamir Morrison, yeah.
Tamir Morrison, like he's not getting any younger either. You can't make him a young clone, and so how do we continue on with all of our favorite characters the same way that Marvel has, which is, you kind of have to keep translating to the next generation. But even then, like we know that Secret Wars is already in play and everybody has signed back on to do Secret Wars. Robert Downey Jr. is coming back. Chris Evans is coming back. Like everybody who said they were done is coming back for Secret Wars.
And we're not gonna get into it because this is a much larger conversation. But this goes back to what Tim has been talking about with the face rig technology that Lucas and Disney have. Everyone can live forever essentially within these universes. So it's looking at that versus Disney's big pockets and their ability to bring people back, like you said, for Secret Wars and whatnot. So it's kind of a we'll see. I see Obi-Wan showing up in Jedi Survivor as more of a likelihood than Bad Batch.
Yes, I am more on the other side. I am more convinced that Bad Batch will show up in Andor season 2.
Live action with Tamir Morrison playing them all.
Yep. Not even Tamir Morrison playing. Here's why. They could stay different because it's not the same. The Bad Batch crew is all different enough. They wouldn't necessarily have to be a Tamir Morrison. But yes.
Here's why I don't think is the tone of Andor. Bad Batch is almost a little on the goofy side in a fun way.
Yeah.
And I feel like Andor is not that. I feel like Andor is more of a really serious tone. I don't think the Bad Batch fits the tone of Andor and what's happening in Andor.
So while I agree, I do think there is a place for that to be the place where they are serious though. Like again, back to the point of like separating audiences a little bit, like Rebels, Clone Wars, Bad Batch are still all in that animated vein of like the adults are going to watch them as long as they're deep into it. And then the kids are going to watch it because they like it. But the moment you translate into Andor, it's far more of an adult show. And all of a sudden you have the ability to do what I think would be realistically probably the most fun, which is taking a book out of the Republic Commando setup and having the Bad Batch team be the Republic, like the Andor Republic Commando group in like one or two of the missions with Cassian for that one of those 3 episode spans where like they're doing a full on deep dive mission with, the crew from Bad Batch doing something, in Subversion. Because it wouldn't surprise me because they're all under contract, right? So if they're under contract under like these groups here, like who's to say that Cassian doesn't find one of those groups, join one of those groups for a couple of ways to like get out of the nose of the Empire, or hires them himself and goes on the mission. So, knowing that they're defectors from the Empire before, the Empire, quote unquote, the Republic, right? So I think the setup is just there if they wanted to use them in that fashion, because we've all been waiting for a Republic Commando-esque like showing, whether it be in live action or animated. So
we will see. We're not that far away, folks. Like January 4th is right around the corner. Christmas is next week. So if you haven't bought your gifts, get kingscoastcoffee.com. I'm going to warn you one last time. kingscoastcoffee.com. Thank you so much, Paul, for hanging out for this episode. Appreciate you hopping in and helping out since Tim is off to Memphis tomorrow. Again, Build Against Cancer is this weekend. Dr. Lupo's YouTube channel, as well as the GCX channel on Twitch. So let's make sure we're supporting the lovely, wonderful children at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, who Rare Drop has been working with now for 7 years. We would love to break some milestones and see some lives change. So Build Against Cancer is this weekend. Make sure you tune in. And if you have the cash to donate, great. If you don't, just share the stream, let your relatives know, tell everyone, say, hey, this awesome thing's happening. And let's do some wonderful and amazing things. You can check out Paulie's at I Love Mondays with a U pretty much everywhere on the interwebs. Sometimes there's underscores, sometimes there's not.
Sometimes
It depends
there's not. That's fine.
But I Love Mondays with a U everywhere. As always, make sure you go check out Tim. He's Darkness429 everywhere on the internet, especially Facebook, where he streams fb.gg/darkness429. Everything I do is at raredrop.co. But if you want to talk to me, it's Kevin X Vision on Twitter, KMagic101 on Instagram. Those are pretty much the only two social media platforms I use. And then Star Wars and Scotch is everywhere. So if you want to follow, just type in Star Wars and Scotch. It'll pop up. Star Wars Scotch on Twitter specifically, but everywhere else it's pretty much Star Wars and Scotch. We hope you have a fantastic week. We'll see you for the last episode of the year next week. For us, the last live episode. We'll have an episode, like I said, in between Christmas and New Year's, but it's pre-recorded and or roundtable with all of our friends, Gay Jedi, Lauren from Most Things Kenobi, and Alex from Star Wars Explained, hosted by Tim. We will see you next week. And Paul, you can have the honors to send us off this week.
May the Force be with you.